Welcome back. All right, so as we are now ready to embark on another 32 team, 16 game night in the National Hockey League, third straight season that's taken place. And one of the main reasons why I've decided to modify my reviews is because the NHL schedule is getting more and more skewed towards games Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, basically. Sunday doesn't seem to have as many games this year as last year. At least it doesn't look like we're seeing as many Sunday games as we have in previous seasons. And I'm just speaking from experience of covering the league for the last 9 years. But I do have some stuff with the Frozen Frenzy. The first issue I'd have, and I'm not going to start at the top of this. All 32 teams played on October 11th, and the NHL was very quiet on the fact that all 32 teams were playing. No, they weren't all playing together, and it's not as crazy as the Frozen Frenzy is going to get tonight, where you're going to have, like, at times 11 games playing at the same time because of the overlapping. But it's still all 32 teams playing. You can still market that. You can still really, really market that, and you could call it something else. But they didn't. And then the why on a Tuesday, I think, is a valid question, especially since Saturday is established as Hockey Night in Canada Day on this side of the border. And in the US, that's when most teams are playing, is Saturday. Saturday's the big day in the National Hockey League, and it's hockey all day. Now, the NHL does try to set it up so that there's no downtime where there's no hockey on Saturdays. They seem to be obsessed with this idea of continuous hockey, having just continuous hockey. I know last year there was discussions about the games in Europe and how they wanted to have 24 hours straight of hockey. They didn't, but that was the plan. And that was where I stood here and said, no, no, I'm not, I can't. On weekends, it's about 12 hours on Saturdays and about 12 hours on Sundays, because even though there's fewer games on Sundays, they're still more spread out. And I can't imagine 24 straight hours of trying to keep my brain that awake and alert and care. It gets to that point. There are times on Saturdays and Sundays by the end of the night I'm like, can we just end this, please? I want to go watch the Traders. I want to go to bed. Anyways, so 80.4% of working people work weekdays. Won't surprise anybody, but this is part of the issue with having it on Tuesday night. So it starts at 3 o'clock Pacific. So for people in the West who work till 4 or 5 o'clock at night, you're going to miss the start of it. And then if you have to go to work anyways, you're probably not watching the whole thing to the end, especially on the East Coast, where games can start as late as 11 o'clock Eastern. And they'll start later. I'll talk about that. Now, the October is the other weird part. So tonight is Game 4 in the World Series. And I understand there are people who don't care about baseball, and I feel bad for those people right now, because if I didn't have a hockey channel, I would just be watching the baseball games. This World Series has been, I think, the best World Series I've seen. And whoever wins, they've earned it. It's fantastic. I guarantee you, the NHL right now, somebody, either in marketing, somebody in the upper mucky muck areas of their management, kind of probably cursing about the fact that the World Series has been this entertaining. And there's a Canadian team and an American team going against each other. So you're going to get viewers from Canada and the US both watching this World Series and knowing that last night's game went 18 innings. And the question being asked of, do these guys have anything left? What do they do for an encore? That was a great game. What an epic, wonderful baseball game. So would you rather watch 16 games in October that don't mean anything? This is the problem. The World Series game is the World Series, and these games in October don't mean anything. We're going to wake up tomorrow, and whatever happened tonight, that was fun, but we move on. We're not talking about, well, this team clinched a playoff spot. Did you see those guys clinched home ice last night? So why not do it in March, right? So coming down to, I have it on the board somewhere here. But yeah, it's in October. I'll get there. Yeah, right here. Save Frozen Frenzy for March or April. If they only want to do it once a year, why don't they do it in April? So, and I'm saying this as somebody who, is 32 teams, 16 games. Why not save this for, I would say, 2 weeks before the end of the season? Not the very end, because a lot of playoff matchups are already set. But if you had Frozen Frenzy 2 weeks before the end of the season, fans are going to go nuts. Like you're going to have a lot of fans going, okay, so this team can clinch, this team can clinch. The counter to that, and one of the issues I take with Frozen Frenzy, and I did talk about this last time I went down to Anaheim and I was talking to people, Ducks people and everything. I said the one issue I take with this is there are great moments that happen in most hockey games, and there are great moments that happen sometimes multiple times in that same game. When you have 16 games on, and it is constant highlight after highlight. So if you're watching the Frozen Frenzy on the NHL network, it's just highlight after highlight after highlight after highlight after highlight, and it can get to be a lot. And so the spectacular play that happens from the game that starts at 3 o'clock today might be forgotten by the time you get to 8 o'clock tonight, because there's so much that's happened. Or things that happen in these games people might not even be aware of because there's just too much information getting thrown at them at the same time. So that's the issue I've had with the 32 team nights. It's not that it's an awful thing. It's just the NHL's point here seems to be we're going to put every team on the ice and we're going to show you 16 games because we're showing you 16 games. None of them have playoff ramifications. They're not saving the best matchups for tonight either. So, all right. So I want to look at the triple header on ESPN because this is the other issue. On ESPN yesterday, some games were announced that start times were changed. And it gave me an aneurysm because, again, it's ESPN making sure there's 2.5 hours between the start time of every game, which would be magic if every game was over in 2.5 hours. They're not. So tonight, there's the triple header. First game starts at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. That game, the puck drop will be on time. But then the next one's at 8:30 p.m., which means that puck drop's probably going to be closer to 8:50. And the 11 p.m. Eastern start, puck drop might be close to midnight Eastern. Or they put that puck drop at like 11:20 Eastern, and you still miss like half the first period because of the fact that the 8:30 Eastern one hasn't finished yet. So I don't understand why not have this one at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. This one then could be 3 hours later. This one's 3 hours later. And you have enough time to not worry about puck drop being a lot later and making this game so late at night that even people on the West Coast are like, I think I'm tapping out. I got to work in the morning. It's going to be what a lot of people would say looking at the schedule. I got to work in the morning. Whereas on Saturday, like, hey, woohoo, I can not go to church on Sunday. Then there's 2 games on Sportsnet. So this is the difference between the Canadian and the American side of it. The Canadian side of it, there's 2 games being broadcast on Sportsnet nationally, and they're half an hour apart, 9:30 Eastern and 10 Eastern. So it's weird. It's weird because you would think that they'd have like some kind of doubleheader set up on Sportsnet, but nope. It doesn't matter because on Sportsnet, everybody's going to be watching the Jays and the Dodgers anyways. So it's just weird. Now, I wanted to get into which games are being shown nationally and not shown nationally as well. So games not being shown nationally, either in Canada or the US, Calgary versus Toronto. This is the only time the Flames visit Toronto all season, not being shown nationally. Vegas at Carolina. That's a huge matchup, not being shown nationally. Anaheim at Florida. Normally that wouldn't be that big a deal, but A, they came into the league together, and B, Anaheim's better right now, and Florida's the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, so are they still not a draw nationally? And then you've got New Jersey and Colorado. And the funny thing, too, is it's not like we didn't know New Jersey and Colorado would be good. We knew that Vegas and Carolina were going to be good. Anaheim might be a bit of a surprise for some, but Florida, again, 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, and it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. How are they not being shown nationally on Frozen Frenzy night? Instead, in the States, being shown nationally, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, Washington and Dallas, LA and San Jose. Now, the Rangers Canucks is being shown nationally in Canada. That's a good call, but is it a good call, or is it just they have the nationwide broadcasting rights for the Canucks on Sportsnet, whereas they don't for Toronto? So is that what we're looking at here? So it's just weird, but I know they could still have that game nationally. Shown nationally in the U.S. though, Pittsburgh versus Philly, and I've seen people on social media complaining that that's the one being broadcast nationally on ESPN. I understand the Battle of Pennsylvania being broadcast nationally though. Washington versus Dallas, good matchup, but is it a rivalry? not really a rivalry. And then you got LA and San Jose, which is a fine matchup. And now that you got Celebrini, now the Sharks are watchable, and the LA Kings look like they're coming back after a slow start. But start time, 11 o'clock Eastern. And like I said, the puck drop's probably going to be pushed back beyond that. I don't complain about that like I used to, because it doesn't matter. The NHL's been doing this for years now, so it's not going to change. It's just it's that's the way the broadcaster wants it. Okay, but what about the fan experience? What about what we the fans are just reality? Games don't finish in 2.5 hours. They might if we didn't have all the pregame crap and if you didn't have national anthems and everything. You might. So if it's a 6 o'clock start time and if the puck drops at 6 o'clock, maybe, because then puck drops usually like 8 minutes after. So you're pulling that start time forward 8 minutes. Maybe if you had like the national anthems and everything out of the way before 6 o'clock. But at any rate, it's done the way that it's done. So I wanted to get into this a little bit more and discuss how I think they could do this and do this well, and understanding that they're not going to pivot away from really busy and really dead nights. And I still think that's odd. It's an odd way of scheduling things. But instead of once a year on Tuesday in October, and they always seem to be in October, 32 team Saturdays once a month, if feasible, right here in ellipses. 32 team Saturdays, and make it two so that, and I understand there's teams that really like the matinee starts, but if you're going to do Frozen Frenzy on Tuesdays, what about doing it on Saturdays once a month, where you go, it is the Frozen Frenzy night. Here we are, it's the big night, and make it an event. Make it an event, and promote it weeks in advance, and go, that was great. Are you ready for the next one? Are you ready? Because they only do it once a season, and I know that the first time they did it, that I think it was Kevin Weeks said what a great success, and the NHL is looking at doing this more often. And I thought, oh God, but there, because I was really tired. But the reality is that if this works, and if this does drum up interest in the NHL, okay, cool, then do it more often, or establish a day that's the busiest, the most must watch. Which I think Saturdays is the day that works. I understand there's college football, NCAA football, but I think a 32-team day that's designated and some kind of promotion for that, and doing it more than once a year, I think it'd be great, because doing this 10 games into the season in October, like I said, it's going up against the World Series, which is going to get great ratings on both sides of the border. Or, like I said, saving it for March or April, or go all or nothing with your scheduling. So way back in the day when I had my own created hockey league, that's what I did. I made it. Now, of course, with the way I scheduled, it didn't matter about like geography. So I could have the LA Kings playing at home on a Monday, playing in New York on a Tuesday, maybe on Thursday they're in Philly, and then Friday they're in San Jose. I didn't care, because it didn't matter. But you could schedule things with 32 teams where maybe you have the 16 game days, and we know they can do something similar. For instance, on American Thanksgiving, there's no games that Thursday. There's 15 on the Wednesday, 15 on the Friday. And just looking at that, you can see how the all or nothing scheduling could be done a little bit more often. You could probably get all 32 teams and just make it so those are event nights, and you promote it and you say, these are our event nights this year. We can't wait to share all this with you. Just do a little better. And obviously it kind of works. So for me personally, the first year they did this in 2023, my review was 55 minutes and 48 seconds. I really want to trim that down. I want to go to sleep tonight. I got 40,000 views approximately the first year. Last year's Frozen Frenzy was 55 minutes and 40 seconds, showing I have a cadence. I'm very impressed with the fact there's only an 8-second difference between the two videos, and it's a 16-game night in both. And my cadence, I got exactly the same time almost. But last year it got approximately 50,000 views. So the NHL definitely has something here, but I think it could be something more. I think there could be something better. I think the NHL could really make this work. So I wanted to talk about another way that the NHL could really, I think, make this product more likely to draw their viewers in, where us hockey fans would be like, hey, if you want to get into hockey, tonight's the night. So you could start with rivalries. Now, when I talk about rivalries, I mean traditional rivalries. So you'd have Toronto, Montreal, the Rangers and the Islanders. You'd have Pittsburgh and Philly, Calgary and Edmonton. For Vancouver, because Calgary's not available, you could have LA, because over the many years, there's been definitely Vancouver and LA. And then that leaves San Jose and Anaheim, and any matchup between California definitely qualifies. But have rivalry nights. It doesn't have to have all 32 teams either, but have those traditional rivalries. And then you could have a night which is dedicated to divisions. Maybe the first 4 games are all Metro. You go, it's Metro time. We've got this, and all night you could focus on what that's going to do to the standings in the Metro. And then the 4 late games, which you'd have the start times for the late games match up to after the early games finish. Then it's all Pacific or it's all Central, right? And you could alternate. You could have one night it's all Metro and Pacific, and the next night it's all Atlantic and Central. And I think fans would enjoy that. I think that'd be great because we know divisional rivalries are great, and you could save that for March and April as well, because that's when all the playoff matchups are being decided. Hot and cold nights. So you could have one night where every game is taking place in, say, a warm location: Vegas, California teams, Florida-based teams, Nashville, Dallas. You'd be like, it's a hot night in the NHL. And then you could have a cold night, too, where they're all games in Canada. You have a game in Buffalo. You have a game in Minnesota, a game in Denver. You could actually make it so that theme nights are kind of fun. I don't think Vancouver would qualify necessarily as the cold locations either. It's always just kind of rainy. We do get cold, but not like a lot of other locations. But yeah, hot and cold. I think there could be something fun there. And just one outdoor game anytime there's an outdoor game. And I mean this. One outdoor game anytime there's an outdoor game. So I don't care if it's a Heritage Classic. I don't care if it's the stadium games. I don't care if it's the Winter Classic. It is the only game that day. That is it. And you promote the hell out of it. And you say, we're just turning everything off tomorrow except this one game because we know this game's really important. And you make sure those outdoor matchups are rivalries. You make sure those outdoor matchups are ones we really want to see, and not just two teams that are together that aren't necessarily rivals, which does sometimes happen. Homecomings. You could have, because the schedule is decided when it is, you could have, like, and this on the same night, maybe Jack Eichel visiting Buffalo, John Tavares visiting the Islanders. You could have where, like, players are going back. And because players don't move in the NHL like they used to, you know who's going to be where on a certain night. You could really have a theme like that where you're like, hey, this is the night where all these guys are going back to where they were first drafted, where these star players are going to where they played college. Something along those lines. Have fun with it. Original 6 themed, I think could work because there's always the big throwback stuff. I think if you had a night where it was just an original 6 night, so you have Chicago, the Rangers, Toronto, Montreal, Detroit, and Boston, and you just match those 6 teams up with each other. And you could even have it where those six teams, those 3 matchups, are the same as, say, back in 1948. It's the same matchup they had on this date back in 1957, and you could have them wearing jerseys from that year. And you could have that theme where it's like, hey, it's this big original 6 night, and then it's done early. Everybody be buzzing about the jerseys they saw because you wouldn't reveal the jerseys until that day. Like, it'd be like, okay, what are they going to wear? Okay, we're going to wear the jerseys from this year, from 1961 or whatever. Because, I mean, the original 6 era went up until 1967. Or another idea I had, and this is just me, is you have the original 6 night, the first night, and then the next night, those original 6 teams play in locations where the 1967 expansion occurred. Or those 1967 expansion teams are playing at original 6 locations. Since all the original 6 teams are kind of close to each other anyways, comparatively speaking with a lot of other teams in the NHL now, why not? Like, I think, because then you could say, okay, it's six games here, or 3 games here, 6 games here, and then you just have a regular night the next night. And if you look at the NHL schedule, there are definitely places where they could put that, and that could be a lot of fun. I honestly think that if they start doing something with All-Star Weekend, something along those lines could be a lot of fun. You could have, like, 6 teams, and you could have a draft where you're like, okay, so we're going to have GMs for these 6 teams draft a team where they can draft any NHLer they want, and then you have a tournament on All-Star Weekend to decide which of the original 6 teams wins that year. Yeah, just an idea I had. So yeah, that throwback nights. We know that the reverse retros, both 1 and 2, were a success. 2.0 was not the success 1.0 was. It does feel like I think the fact that you're telling people we want you to buy 64 jerseys turned some people off, or 63 jerseys, I guess, since Seattle wasn't in the first one. But the reality is that I think throwback nights are great. So you could have a night where every team is wearing a jersey from, like I said, a certain year, and say, okay, so this year we're gonna have everybody do a throwback to 1994. We're gonna have everybody, and for the teams that weren't around in 1984, they have some fun with it, right? The Minnesota Wild could do like their Minnesota North Star style throwback that they wear. And then Kids Day. So they always have, every team has their Kids Day. And so I had this idea as well where you could have, and it has to be on a Saturday. It has to be during the day. Originally I wrote Kids Night and I went, nah, this is not going to work. Can't have kids up till this time at night, and no kids are watching that, but have a Kids Day. I did watch the Hockeyverse, the animated thing they have going. I watched like the end of I think it was the Rangers and the Leafs they had on this week. That's weird. The animation's weird. And when you have a host that's always looking up, they're not looking at you, and their mouth doesn't quite work right, it's like, yeah, it's 2025. What's going on? What's happening? Why does it look like a reboot, but not quite? So I definitely think the NHL has some work to do in terms of appealing to kids. They're trying. I get it. And I mean, maybe it works for some, but at any rate, I think if you had a Kids Day where that's the night, of course, where you have kids doing the announcements on the PA, but you could have like broadcasts set up where it's still fine for us to watch it, but there's like little factoids being thrown in there the kids might not know about hockey, stuff like that, and just make it where every game is set up like that. And while it would annoy some fans, yes, I'm sure there will be some that are annoyed by that, might appeal to the audience. Because coming back to the start of this, why on a Tuesday, why in October? The question my wife and I always ask each other is, who is this for? And the question that I would ask as well is, does it grow the game? My answer would be probably not. I don't know that there's very many people, if you're trying to grow the game, that you can call on and say, hey, you want to watch some hockey tonight? I guess I don't really watch hockey. Who's playing? Oh, you're in luck. There's 16 games on, and like it's on for like 10 and a half hours. Yeah, no, I'm doing something else, dude. I'm sorry. So it's just, it's interesting because I think it is set up for already established fans that'll be watching anyways. But I'd be interested to know your ideas, your thoughts on this as we get ready for another. I get ready for another long day of hockey watching and all that. But that's why I'm doing the modified reviews. It won't be 55 minutes this year. My cadence being as my cadence is, it's not going to be 55 minutes, even though I've added the standings at the end of the reviews, which I'm very glad I've done. Yeah, that's part of the reason I knew I had to cut things down, was when last year's was also 55 minutes. I was like this, because then, let's see, 11 o'clock, so 10:30. So that's a review that's not going up before about midnight my time. And I'm honestly surprised it does this well. I always feel like when the games are finished, I want the review to go up about a half an hour after the last game finished, at latest. The sooner I can get that video up, the sooner that I can have that review in place, the better. And as part of the reason I went to the modified, also to make it a little bit easier for me. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. What do you think of what the NHL does with the Frozen Frenzy and the marketing that's not very good? I know that on social media they changed their banner and their profile pictures today to Frozen Frenzy. Why didn't you change it to that like a week ago? Yeah, why not just do it a week ago and just really promote the hell out of it and do a countdown and that kind of thing? Because if it's this really big deal, then make it seem like it's a big deal. Promote it like it's a big deal, rather than on that day going, hey, so you're going to watch 10 and a half hours of hockey tonight? And when people say, nah, I'm good, I'll watch a couple hours, they were probably going to watch a couple hours anyways. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. And I know there's people that are always like, I hope Shannon's okay. Oh, I'll be fine. It's not bad. And because of the fact that this starts so late, I have plenty of time to fill in the boards before the review gets done. I don't think I'm going to have any time to cheat and get any of the recording done before the last game is done. But if I get any time at all where I could cheat and start it a little bit earlier, I will probably try. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Greatly appreciated. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. That being said, I'm done for now. I will talk to you again soon.